arbitral institution to actually be held liable for any arbitration-related conduct. There's an expectation that only truly egregious conduct, corruption, or neglect bordering on abandonment, and the like, will lead to actual liability. So with limited legal accountability, how do we ensure that international arbitrators and arbitral institutions will operate at the very high level of dependability, competence, and ethics that we expect? That first, I think that honor and goodwill and professional pride exist in this community in substantial abundance. And I don't think we should discount the importance of those values that so many people hold. I also know that arbitrators and arbitral institutions can press each other to operate the way that we all expect, and I think they do. But there are times when that's just not enough to do the job. I'll give you a simple example that we talk about sometimes, and that's the award that takes an extraordinary amount of time to render, was referred to this morning. That actually happens a lot, and it frustrates a lot of parties and a lot of counsel. But there's no immediate response, and there's really no recourse that can be taken. So in between legal liability for egregious misconduct and almost religious-like submission to the good grace of arbitrators, where do we turn for accountability for everything else? As Bill explained, there's one additional very important source of accountability, and of course that's the arbitration consumers. Companies and their counsel decide whether disputes will be submitted to arbitration. They decide what institution, if any, will administer the arbitration. They decide where the arbitration will be held, and in many cases, they decide who the arbitrators will be. I like to think of this as commercial accountability. For those of you who follow the OJMID listserv, it's been a very hot topic in the past week or so. And just as with legal accountability, where the key moment is when a court determines whether the arbitrator or institution is liable, we know the key moments when commercial accountability is assessed. First, when the dispute resolution clause is drafted for a commercial contract. That's the key moment for venues, for arbitral institutions, and frankly, for arbitration itself. At that moment, we're all in this together. The second moment is when the dispute arises. That is primarily the key moment for arbitrators, because most arbitrators are appointed at the commencement of the arbitration. Sometimes that's also an important moment for arbitrators or for institutions in the rare case where disputing parties could reach a post-dispute arbitration agreement. Now, before I go any further, I want to acknowledge that investor-state arbitration, or really any treaty arbitration, is somewhat different, and it's worthy of a separate discussion that I'm not going to get into here. That discussion would have to also consider the influence and impact of political accountability. So we'll set that aside, except to the extent that investor-state arbitration includes some of the same issues in commercial arbitration, like the appointment of arbitrators. In a perfect world, the opportunity that we have to draft arbitration clauses, and I get to do quite a lot of that at a big commercial firm, and the opportunity that we have to select arbitrators would fill the accountability gap quite nicely. It would allow parties and counsel to select arbitrators and institutions that exhibit the qualities they're looking for, to reward high performers, and to avoid selecting institutions or appointing arbitrators who are considered unreliable or who are simply not suited to the particular needs of the case. The problem is, how do you assess an arbitrator's past performance or an institution's track record when most arbitrations are shrouded in confidentiality? A court assessing the legal liability of an arbitrator can take evidence about what happened in a particular case and use that as a basis for a decision. But parties and counsel appointing arbitrators don't have the power to take evidence in that way. Now, I have the good fortune to work at Skadden Arps, which has a large global arbitration practice with many years of collective experience with arbitrators and institutions that we carefully record and maintain. So when a well-known arbitrator is suggested for a case we're involved in, we have certain advantages. Firm-wide, we've probably appeared before her a number of times before. One of my colleagues at Gatton might even have sat on a tribunal with her. And of course, we go to great